Proverbs for a while. The last couple messages we did talked about some Proverbs on stewardship. And we looked at avoiding debt, and we looked at being generous the last couple weeks. And we really fleshed those out for what it means for us today. And last week I also mentioned we were going to do one more stewardship proverb, and God changed that. God had other plans for that. So I posted on our Facebook group, if you're interested, just a handful of other stewardship proverbs, just food for thought to have God pick your brain like that. So God directed me to something else, a different proverb tonight. And he'd already put a particular proverb on my heart. And then yesterday morning, something unusual happened to me that really confirmed as I was just kind of getting ready for the day. Or am I really going to change it up and do this other proverb? God did something to confirm it. So on Mondays, I usually get up early so I can get started early on my message for Tuesdays. And it's before the campus library opens, so I usually go to a coffee shop Monday morning. And so yesterday morning, I was at Bigby, and this lady came in, got her coffee, sat down at the table next to mine. And it looked like, just to give you a picture of the scene, it looked like maybe she was missing a tooth or two. She had a backpack and a couple other bags with her that she never got into while she was at Bigby. So as if maybe she walked there. I didn't see if she drove or walked or anything. But she also had this really nice Columbia coat, and so I have no idea what her backstory is. Just to give you a picture. And I couldn't tell you her age. My guess would be somewhere around my age, plus or minus 10 years. So just laying out the picture, just laying out the scene. So she was at the next table, sitting in the corner that kind of faced the back corner of Bigby, and she was looking out the window at the pre-dawn twilight, because of the time change, it's dark, late still. And I had my earbuds in, I was getting my documents set up, starting to put some initial thoughts down for the message tonight. And she turned around and looked at me a couple different times as if she recognized me. So when she looked again, I took out my earbuds, and she asked me if I went to SVSU. And I said, no, but I work with the campus ministry there. And that seemed to make sense to her. And she asked me which one. I told her his house. And she said her name was Tammy, and that I wouldn't know her. But she often prays for and speaks a blessing over different ministries in the area and their leaders. And she said that God had a word for me. And she stepped over to my table and started talking. So in case you're wondering, that doesn't happen to me. Like that's not a normal thing. I mean, I'll see people at Bigby and talk to them, but it's like Stephen Craig from Gap or Mike Peterson or Kareem from Impact. And like we're already friends, I know them. We'll talk at Bigby and hang out a little bit when we see each other there. But it's not a normal thing for a stranger to approach me and say they have a word from God to speak into my life. So it was cool, but kind of weird. And so she starts speaking things, referring to a number of Bible references, speaking the Hebrew name of God a few different times, like El Shaddai and stuff like that. And she's kind of talking about some general things and a little bit some specific things. And as she transitioned to some more specific things, other than like kind of general blessings for our ministry, she kept looking off to the side as if she was like hearing from God, or like trying to put into words the picture that God was showing her. And now she did that a few times, and a few times she said, like, give me a moment, and like she's trying to hear from God to give this to me. And at one point she finally pulled up a chair and sat down next to me. And all the while people are coming in now, getting their coffee, a few people sitting down at other tables. And like I said, it was cool, but kind of awkward. And I mean, it wasn't, but it really should have been. And I won't tell you what she said right now, but maybe later. So I'm going to come back to that story. Maybe you've had some kind of similar experience. Not necessarily something just like that. Probably not. Maybe. But have you ever had an experience where you sensed God was in it, or God was leading you to do something, but it was just awkward or foreign or really weird for you? Maybe it went against something that you thought you knew. Maybe it was outside your comfort zone in a big way, or maybe, but you just sensed that God was in it, and He was leading you to this. So if you've been interested in God for very long at all, I'm guessing you've probably had experienced something like that, maybe not as overt as my experience yesterday morning. That was unusual for me. But the idea that God's over here and wants me over here, but I wouldn't go over there by myself if God weren't telling me to go over there. So even if you're brand new to the concept of the God of the Bible, maybe this involves someone inviting you to his house tonight, or maybe you saw a flyer or saw something on Facebook and came even though you wouldn't normally have done that, but you sensed that God wanted you here, or that you're supposed to come, despite your hesitations. So that's what our proverb is about tonight. It's one of those proverbs that won't necessarily immediately make sense. So we might have to think about it for a while, and then it'll make sense. You might read it, and when we read it, you might think, what the heck does this have to do with what Troy just said? But let it sink in a moment, and then we'll draw some connections. So our proverb is Proverbs 14:4. It says, where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops come by the strength of the ox. Seems like some random farming proverb. Just useless information to us, maybe. So if you did not grow up on an animal farm, you might be thinking, like, scratching your head, what does this have to do with anything, with the little question mark in your question bubble? And you might wonder about that. So here we go. Where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops come by the strength of the ox. So here's how we're going to understand it. Let's say you're a farmer before the time of tractors, or maybe in a part of the world that can't afford much farming machinery. And you would have, because you don't have a tractor or anything like that, you would have an ox or two or several oxen to hook up a plow to, and in order to work the ground. And even if in reality, if you've never set foot on a farm, you can probably picture what I'm saying through pictures or videos that you've seen. So let's say you're this farmer using an ox or oxen to plow the ground, but you're also kind of a neat freak. And you like to have your life orderly, and you like cleanliness, and you're the person who cleans up after all your slob roommates. And if you happen to be the messy roommate, just use your imagination for this. So as a farmer, when you're working the ground, when you're not working the ground, you probably have a place to park your oxen, like a barn or a stall in the barn or a stable. And you would have a manger there. And we're only like a week and a half away from official Christmas season, so say the word manger, you think, oh, that's where they laid baby Jesus. And yes, that's true, but it was a feeding trough. So that's what a manger is. So you would feed your oxen by putting some hay, maybe some grain, in the manger. And because you're a neat freak, you might lay it out all neatly centered, kind of take a picture of it, pin it to Pinterest. Here's the thing, oxen are messy eaters, and it's just so annoying to you. They kind of spread their food out all over the place as they're eating it, and they get some of it on the floor, And by the way, have you seen the floor of the barn? You're probably going to need some of these, and you're probably going to need one of these to deal with the mess on the floor of the barn. So it's so messy to keep those oxen. They mess with your picture of order and the way things are supposed to be in your life. And beyond the work of plowing with them, it's work just to keep them. You have to keep refilling the manger, you have to keep mucking out the stall, shoveling out the manure. And all that work might just tempt you to get rid of the oxen. They're just such a hassle, they're so messy, might be tempted just to get rid of those. Where there are no oxen, the manger is clean. Hallelujah! But abundant crops come by the strength of the ox. You could forego the messiness and the stinkiness and the awkwardness by getting rid of the oxen. But without those oxen, you're not going to plow much land, and therefore you're not going to have much of a harvest as a farmer. You won't receive the abundance that you would have received by dealing with mess. So here's our main takeaway thought for tonight, the first part of it. God's blessing comes through the messiness. God's blessing comes through the messiness. I'm not sure why, but sometimes we get this picture that God's blessing is supposed to be neat and crisp and clean. It's a blessing, right? So why would we have to deal with a mess if we're getting God's blessing? But receiving God's blessing doesn't mean it's not without diligence. Doesn't mean it's without awkwardness. It doesn't mean it's without struggle. God's blessing comes through the messiness. It often comes on the other side of the mess, on the other side of the awkwardness, the work, the wrestling, even the pain. So I'm going to come back around to an application for that, for our proverb and our takeaway. I want to spend a little time on a tangent first. And what if the messiness we're talking about isn't just something that we need to do, like take care of the ox and get it done? What if it's something bad that happens to us? What if we're talking about that kind of mess? It's kind of a tangent from our proverb, but I think it's important to look at this. So, Job 42, verses 10 through 17, this is like the very end of the book of Job. It says that God blessed the latter part of Job's life twice as much as the beginning. He was a wealthy man to start, so there's a lot of abundance. There's a lot of blessing there at the end of Job's life. But Job's abundance came through about the worst spiritual warfare and pain that you could imagine. In Job chapters 1 and 2, it says that Satan caused Job's 10 adult children to be killed in a catastrophe. And all of Job's servants to be murdered. All of his possessions to be stolen. And he caused painful boils from the top of Job's head to his feet. And to make matters worse, as a result of all this, his wife left him and his friends blamed him for all of it. So I want to be very clear when we have something bad that happens to us, or like Job's situation here, God did not cause that. Satan did. God did not cause that. Satan did. But God allowed it. He allowed it because he knew the abundance that he could provide, the blessing that he could provide through that experience. He knew the blessings he could bring about on the other side of it. So we need to not give up on God in the process, not let the word victim kind of reflect who we are and define us. The identity of a Christian is always found in Christ and who he declares us to be. So Job ended up, after this, with twice as much wealth as before. He had 10 more kids, and he got to love on those kids and their kids down to his great-grandchildren. Job had 140 years of great blessing that followed one really horrible week. About the worst week you could imagine. James 5, verse 11 says this about Job. As you know, we count blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Well, if he was compassionate, he wouldn't have made me go through that. Well, he allowed it so he could bring more compassion, more mercy, more blessing through that experience if we allow him to. The good part wasn't the tragedy. The good part was what God could bring about through the tragedy. Another verse about this is 2 Corinthians 1, verses 3 and 4. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with comfort we ourselves received from God. So I could never have the same effect of comforting someone and healing someone if I haven't been through something similar as them. So coming through that mess can result in great blessings to ourselves and to others that we help through it, something similar. So if something's been done to me, God can still bring about blessing and abundance as even better than it was before. If something's been done to me, God can still bring about blessing and abundance that's even better than it was before. I know that's hard to see in the midst of the pain. Job couldn't see that. And while he's scraping his boils with a piece of broken pottery, while the news of his children's death is still fresh in his ears, he couldn't see that. But he experienced that abundance for another 140 years, and we don't live that long, but God can still give us great abundance after something horrible happens. So we just need to trust God in that and not fail to move forward through it. So that was addressing if something bad happened to us. A little bit of a tangent, but I think helpful. So let's look back again at a proverb and our main takeaway. So Proverbs 14:4, where there are no oxen, the manger is clean. But abundant crops come by the strength of the ox. And then our main first part of our takeaway from that, God's blessing comes through the messiness. God's blessing comes through the messiness. So how might I apply this to my life? Let's say I'm not going through a tragedy right now. At times, God leads me to a situation I might consider messy. In other words, he wants to lead me to a good place, but it looks like a messy place or a messy journey to get there to me. So let's consider some examples. The work God leads me to might mess with my laziness. The work God leads me to might mess with my laziness. And I think most of us have some passive tendencies to us. It might mess with my entertainment plans. I wanted to do a Netflix binge or whatever instead of go do what you want me to do, God. God might lead me in a way that messes with the doctrine that I've been taught. He'll never lead us to something that's contrary to the Bible, but unfortunately not everything that churches say are supported by the Bible, and we have to look into his word to make sure to see where the truth is. God might lead me in a way that messes with my view of what's socially acceptable or awkward. Like, go straight up to that person, start talking to them. What? Are you kidding? He might lead us to do something like that. He might lead us to do something that messes with my fear of failure or rejection or the unknown, which is probably something a lot of us wrestle with at times. So when we sense God leading, it's often to a place that we might consider messy. But here's the bottom line. If I can't see past the mess, I won't see the abundant harvest. It looks messy. I might not go there. But if I can't see past that mess, I'm not going to see the abundant harvest. The harvest is why the farmer deals with the mess of the oxen. When God leads us outside our comfort zones, our harvest should be our motivation as well. Don't focus on the awkwardness or the work or the uncertainty of it. If God's leading me to do something, He's got a plan of blessing for it. And that's good enough for me, whether that's blessing for me or blessing for another person, or maybe a little bit of both in different ways. So let me come back to my situation at Bigby yesterday morning. Just a little side note, many of you know this summer I felt God leading me to develop a discipleship curriculum that we could implement at His house and start really getting disciples, making disciples in a tangible way. And maybe it could extend even beyond His house. So I've been working on that, and I've been implementing it, training a few guys and a few girls in doing this. But I've kind of felt a little discouraged lately. Not anything that they're doing, but just that I'm not finished with it yet. I was hoping to be almost done by the end of the semester, and I'm not yet. And my guys group couldn't go through it this week because I didn't have the next lesson ready. So I'm starting to feel a time crunch with it. It's been off to a great start, but those fears, will it finish well? Will I be able to accomplish all the goals that I felt God leading me to do this in the first place? All these uncertainties and spiritual warfare going on inside me. So when this woman named Tammy breaks some social norms by approaching a stranger about something she felt God wanted me to know. That was probably messy for her, although I kind of get the idea that it's not the first time she'd done something like that. But it was messy for me. I had thoughts like, what are you doing? People don't do this. Is this for real? I hope this doesn't take too long because I've got a lot of work to do. But then there were other thoughts mixed in with that. What if God really has a message for me through her? This is cool. It's always great to hear a blessing from somebody. And I could have kept my earbuds in and ignored her. Kept turning around and looking at me. I could have just ignored it. I could have politely declined when she said, I've got a word from God for you. I'm like, no, that's okay. I'm not really comfortable with you saying that. But I let God lead. And so as she kept looking off to put into words the picture God was giving her, she began to describe it. And it was exactly what I needed to hear from God, to renew my confidence in developing this discipleship material. She had no idea about that I was working on this. She didn't use the word discipleship, but what she described fit perfectly for what had been going on inside me. So I won't go into the details of what she said, but the point is that I let God lead me into this slightly messy situation and found an abundant blessing on the other side of it. So let me ask all of us, what mess is God leading me into? What mess is God leading me into? You may already know exactly what that is. Maybe it's something recent. Maybe it's something He's been putting on your heart for a while now. And maybe it's something maybe you don't know right now, and maybe it's something He'll lead you to this week or over Thanksgiving break. Maybe it's to talk to someone specific about Jesus. Maybe it's to sign up for a mission trip. Maybe it's to be immersed in baptism as your personal response to God's offer of grace and love and salvation. Doing what he leads you in might get messy. But if I can't see past the mess, I won't see the abundant harvest. God's blessing comes through the messiness.